more divisions coming from Israel. Now, more conflict coming from the Israeli defense minister and the IDF chief of staff. Now, if you recall, Benjamin Netanyahu sacked Yoav Gallant previously because Yoav Gallant was seen as a man who doesn't really sit well with Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu sacked him before during the protests of the against the judicial reform that Benjamin Netanyahu was pushing for, and he had to take him back following protests asking for Gallant to be back as the defense minister. Then he sacked him. And he brought in Israel Katz. Israel Katz, a man with no experience at that level. He had no senior top positions in the Israeli army. And as a matter of fact, even within Israel, they criticized him for his lack of experience. He made a joke out of himself with certain statements he made when he was with the Israeli army in relation to Lebanon. He got mixed up when it comes to the desires of Benjamin Netanyahu or the objectives of the war, to be more accurate, in Lebanon, because the main objective, the declared objective of Benjamin Netanyahu, was to return the Israeli settlers back to the north. When the defense minister, the now defense minister, Israel Katz, was saying, no, our job is to eliminate the Hezbollah. And at the time, the Israeli chief of staff, the IDF chief of staff, looked at him in like a strange way, like, what are you talking about? But now he is escalating against them. What is he doing? He is urging the Israeli army to comply completely with investigations that are being made surrounding the 7th of October. Now, there are certain rules and procedures that the IDF follows. And many are saying in Israel that Katz, the Israeli defense minister, is stretching the boundaries now, pushing the limits. And they're criticizing him openly. One of the people who criticized Israel Katz was none other than Daniel Hagari, the spokesperson of the IDF. And now the Israeli defense minister, Katz, is saying an apology is not enough. So what is he planning to push him to get fired or sack him? But the fact of the matter is, and that's something that's been there for a very long time now, since the beginning of the genocide, there is a very large split at the top of the Israeli political and military echelons. They have a massive split between them. People work against each other to a level where Benjamin Netanyahu had to form a unit in the Israeli army to work for him and report for him directly against all of the procedures of the IDF, to a level where Benjamin Netanyahu had to security check the IDF chief of staff previously many times before meeting with him, in fear of certain leaks, to check if he has wires, if he's going to leak some information, because there were leaks before from meetings, from cabinet meetings, and these people have no faith in each other. So they're more split than anyone can imagine. And these things are only the tip of the iceberg, what's being published in even Israeli mainstream media, who try and cover it up in general. Moving on to Gaza and what's happening with the ceasefire, and where are we on the ground? Well, Israel is continuing, of course, the genocide with more massacres all across of Gaza. They are still banning the aid and the necessary equipment from going into hospitals. The situation is still very tough with the civilians, but there are hopes of a ceasefire. There are hopes of a ceasefire soon. We'll get to a ceasefire in a second. But before that, Al-Qassam brigades, the armed wing of Hamas, they're continuing to target the genocide forces heavily in Gaza, and they posted more videos of them in Jabalia targeting genocide forces and even obtaining information from their drones. And these are images that were published from Israeli drones inside of Gaza. They targeted the Merkava tank with a Yasin 105 with smoke seen coming out of it after they targeted it too. And they also used an anti-personnel against several soldiers alongside other attacks. So they're, of course, continuing with resistance actions. Israel today confirmed that two Israeli genocide soldiers were killed in North Gaza. Again, apart from the 4 that they declared were killed yesterday. So it's continuing, and the resistance is not stopping, despite all of the Israeli genocide and massacres against the civilians. Now, when it comes to the ceasefire, we've been talking about the ceasefire for a very long time. Ups and downs when it comes to the ceasefire. Hopeful situations, positivity, pessimism, Netanyahu going back, making it impossible, delegations, advanced stages. But according to Anthony Blinken, he still says that the prospect of a ceasefire deal remains very close. Now, what the Biden administration are saying now is, if we don't get a deal within 12 days, we will hand the ceasefire deal to Donald Trump. There's still a very high likelihood of having a ceasefire, but if we don't get it, well, Blinken was saying, I hope that we can get it over the line in the time that we have. But if it doesn't happen up until the 20th of January, I believe that when we get that deal, and we will get it, it'll be on the basis of the plan that President Biden put before the world back in May. That's even if Donald Trump continues with that ceasefire. What is that telling you? That tells you that all of the deal updates and all of the amendments and everything hasn't really changed much since Biden's speech about the ceasefire, that Hamas welcomed and accepted. Joe Biden had a speech in which he declared back in May 2023, where he declared that Benjamin Netanyahu was actually the one who agreed to this. As a matter of fact, the previous war cabinet member, Gadi Eisenkot, who then resigned with Benny Gantz, he himself said that Netanyahu accepted it and then retreated following threats from the ultra-right-wing figures in his government, Smotrich primarily, but also Ben Gvir. And then they resigned, him and Benny Gantz, in June. They gave Benjamin Netanyahu an ultimatum, and they both resigned in June. What does that say? Well, that says that Hamas are still negotiating from a position of power despite all of the Israeli genocide and crimes that are happening in Gaza. This is something astonishing. They're still negotiating from a position of power. I mean, states would have raised the white flags if they faced this level of brutality and barbarism, modern day barbarism, coming from this genocide state against any country. Yet Hamas and the Palestinian resistance and the Palestinian people, they're not giving up. They're like, well, what are you threatening us with, right? Like Donald Trump, again, with his contradicting moves, saying he promises hell. The Palestinians were like, what, are you promising us hell? We're already living in hell. What do you mean? Bring it on. What are you going to do? That says that Hamas and the Palestinian resistance, and of course with Hamas, they're leading the negotiating delegation, speaking on behalf of all of the Palestinian resistance. They are talking for the best interests of the people of Gaza at the end of the day. Why? Because they don't want a continuation of the war. They don't want to give Israeli prisoners of war on a silver plate for Israel, only for the genocide entity to continue committing crime. No, they want to end the war. They want the genocide occupation forces to withdraw from Gaza. They want to rebuild Gaza. They want the people to go back to everywhere where they were expelled from, and also rebuild and get all of the aid in.